Hey everyone, it's Boondok here, and today we're going to be doing a repaint of, well, maybe not a repaint, but a new paint of some of our PCs from our current campaign that we're playing. I'm going to film probably just the one around our druid. They have an orange-brown color scheme, but I'm going to show you some of the other figures that I picked up that I'm going to be redoing, and I'll probably put finished photos of them both in the community tab or a future video or on my Instagram page or the Facebook group if anybody's in there. I know there's like 2 or 3 of you that visit. um, so I'm just going to be doing essentially a little paint with me in the background while I talk about, I guess, something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and that's kind of where are all the TTRPGs going? What's the future of all of our role-playing games that we play? We are gifted to be in a time where I feel like the industry is absolutely growing, especially after the COVID years, and there's more and more publications, either new editions printing of games. I mean, so obviously it's the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, so they have their new player's handbook that's coming out after the 5e. I know we've kind of talked about that a little bit before on some of our live streams. But there's also, revamped editions of things such as, the Masquerade, the Vampire Masquerade. There's a lot of new things coming out, especially in the Kickstarter or backer kit realm. For instance, I bought into the Old Gods of Appalachia TTRPG that's based off of the podcast. And there's some other ones. There's a lot of fandom-based ones. There's the Avatar one that came out. I mean, Airbending Avatar, not Blue People Avatar. That came out, I want to say, about 2 years ago. They released all the products for it after the Kickstarter. So there's a whole lot of things out there. But the one thing I wanted to touch on was I'm curious to see where individual creativity is going to go. And I'll kind of elaborate that on a little bit. So if you hop onto pretty much any social media platform anymore, you're getting ads. It's just what it is. And something I've seen frequently is a lot of my ads are based around gaming. I'm not going to necessarily complain about that, other than that they entice me to spend a lot more money than I have. But a lot of them are for indie publishers or Kickstarters or backer kits that are based around, I would say, 5e supplements, additions, modules, things like that, things of that nature. And it makes me wonder if we are going to get to a point where we are very reliant upon, I would say, already printed materials and not necessarily develop our own information. Now, I understand that not everybody is a homebrew campaign aficionado, or they don't prefer it. They like the cut and dry, already established modules from the printer, or something very strict that each player can follow, so that, for argument's sake, you have something stated explicitly. There's no wishy-washiness between what's going on and what people think is going on. I've never played that way, so if you do play that way, this video is pretty much pointless for you. And that's fine. You can just put it on mute and watch the painting, or you can leave. That's a-okay. I'm not worried about any income from views, because I get no income from views, so if it's not your thing, it's all right. However, for those of us that do play homebrew, or like to make our own supplements, I'm very curious on how you think, I would say, the flooding of the market with these additions is going to affect, I would say, new player creativity, or input. And so I guess, for example, I always cite this all the time, my one adventure, I included a whole bunch of monsters and creatures from Filipino folklore. Now, I thought, oh man, it'd be really cool if these were kind of actually integrated into the main game. Obviously, we look through the monster manual and you can see where certain monsters were pulled in, adapted from mythologies or things like that are a lot more I don't want to say popular, but more well referenced. For instance, if we look at all the dragons in Dungeons and Dragons, they're pretty much all European stylizing. They're not Asiatic dragons now. Obviously, if we go back to older editions, you have character and other things where you do get into adventures of other cultures. Now they're just kind of mashing them all together. Now I had thought that, and then I did see a Kickstarter that references the Filipino Islands, gives you a specific subclass for some character building that represents a lot of their culture and folklore, as well as encounters and monsters that align with that. I'm like, oh, sweet. So somebody got the idea before me. I mean, that's a-okay. That's not a problem. There's always that confliction of me being a very tall, pale, American, European heritage individual making content that is of another culture. I try to respect it, but some people see it as, taking it in improperly. But I won't speak on that on this video. And there's other ones too that were kind of interesting. There's one that I saw recently that is about different tattoos that your characters can get and how they would benefit their character in game, be them magical or buffs or, curses or things like that. And it got me sitting there and I was like, well, do you need to buy that? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's really nice that people are creating supplements of these natures and that other people are thinking about it too, but I worry that it takes away from, I guess, the possible individuality that's put into a game. I would kind of expect either the DM or GM to make materials for the campaign that they're creating that revolves around their interests or their players' interests and can kind of make it a lot more personal versus it being a, cookie cutter edition. Now, I understand, like I said before, maybe some people want that edition to be completely fleshed out, written out, so it's absolute whatever is intended. If they do have a player that is a little bit of a rule monger, we'll always have every page sticky noted for exactly what it's supposed to do, and we'll argue, till the day's end. And I apologize if you have one of those folks at your table, or if you are one of those folks, just loosen up a little bit. It's a game. It's for fun. I know some people are going to be like, well, you're supposed to play the game how it's supposed to be played. Yes, I understand. But again, for a lot of this is our break from reality. This is our break from our everyday jobs, the monotony of things. So I don't need somebody being a stickler at work and being a stickler at my gaming table. That's just it's not worth it. But if you don't have one of those players, just feel free to be wibbly wobbly with it, I guess, to go for the Doctor Who line there. Just create something that is yours. If you find that your resources are missing something, for instance, I talked before about how in the 5 ebooks we could not find a decent table or reference for when it came to grappling damage or things like that, hand-to-hand in-person fighting. So we had to reference older editions, which had a full table and hit die breakdown, or you create that resource. You, as a player, you go to your DM and be like, hey, I created this table, this is what I think would work out, this is what I think is fair. Or as a DM, you sit down with your player and like, look, this is how I broke it down, I think this is fair given what you're fighting, your skill level, your character background, things like that, etc., etc. I feel like having everything already handed to you, I'm always worried about the table just being more page flipping versus actual playing. And I guess that's kind of what I'm posing to you guys today is, what do you think the good balance is? Do you think that what's happening right now is an absolute benefit? There's no problem with it? Are you, sitting back and looking like, well, okay, if there's someone, if my kids, my siblings, nieces and nephews are getting into this, are they going to be able to structure something on their own, or are they, again, going to look for reference in everything? Um, I don't think one is inherently better or worse, right or wrong. I prefer to see people bringing their own flavor to the game, um, making it interesting. Um, for instance, a and I always keep citing my DM, my husband's work, and so hopefully he doesn't feel half of this video is plagiarized off his stuff. But your critical hit, critical fumble table. Okay, there's some resources out there that you can reference for it. You can make one yourself. I always think, at least having played now for a little bit and only ran one or two, um, you should make one based around your players. If you know what your players are consistently going to do, if you know what their go-tos are, what they lean on, put it against them, and not in an aggressive way unless they're really acting up during a session, but make it built for your players, not just a generic overall table. Because who's to say you won't open that one day and be like, well, this doesn't apply to this scenario whatsoever at all. How am I supposed to use this? So, I mean, I guess that's the point I'm just getting to here. I guess it's fair if I give a little example of where I'm coming from. Um, so I guess you guys know if I'm spoiled and that's what's leading to my opinion, or just so you kind of understand how I'm seeing it. Um, so when I first really got into playing was, God, 10 years ago? It doesn't feel like 10 years ago. Um, it was with a group of Marines, and nobody could really agree on whether they wanted to play 3.5 or 5e, because everybody had different backgrounds. However, none of us have ever played Pathfinder, so our DMGM just pretty much essentially decided, okay, well, we're going to play Pathfinder, and we are going to absolutely bastardize this thing. he he sat down and put in edits, additions, changes. It was still Pathfinder at its core, at its metric base when it came to building out and rolling and things like that. But he absolutely made it built around his players. In part, he had to do that because we were on deployment rotations. So, everybody was headed out between 6-month intervals. So you had to find something that everyone's character had to do and be ready for them to, get word that in, 3 to 6 months, they're going somewhere else, so their character can't be in the campaign. So you had a lot of pick up and drop off points for a lot of the players, but they were still involved in the story. So sometimes you'd be like, okay, you're going on deployment. That means your character is going to be spending 6 months here doing training, or they're going to be out here trying to do this side quest with, some sort of Harper equivalent or what have you. We still played Dungeons and Dragons models that people wanted to visit. So we, had some Ravenloft things. We had, I think there was a Xanathar quest in there somewhere, or Thieves Guild. I don't 100% remember which one we were looking to worm our way into. I apologize. It's been a little bit. But he would also support people's outside creative interests in game as well. So, for instance, I told you guys the story of xBundok. xBundok was written into the campaign, and we interacted with him, and he absolutely obliterated 2 of our characters. And that's just what it is. So, him as an individual, wanting to make the best game he could for his players, sat down and went through all this, converted everything, built things out. And I understand maybe it's a time thing. Folks don't have the time to do that. So having something provided for you already makes that a lot easier. I just feel that it takes out a little bit of the fun, a little bit of why we play the game. And my group, we were having the conversation when this came out 50 years ago. If you didn't get along with your player group, you didn't play. There were other people playing, but it obviously not to the scale that it is today. We have the benefit of pulp culture making this, huge again. We have a new D&D movie that came out 2 years ago, I think. I mean, Stranger Things, referencing it, it has to be getting folks into the tabletop playing realm. Magic, even though, again, I don't play any trading card games, I don't do any of that, but them, importing other fandoms or things like that into their game also helps people transition into the game we play. It's the board game industry in general is blowing up. Again, like I said, after COVID, after everybody spent time inside, they realized, like, hey, this is, a viable pastime. This is interesting. I enjoy this. It's not just something for a quote-unquote bunch of nerds to sit around doing. So my experience with crafting the game comes from actually building out your game. You start with the bones of what's provided to you from the rulebook, the bestiaries or monster manuals, the DMGM guides, some pre-existing modules, and you go from there. And I feel like now we have even more tools available to be able to do that, to make your own versus relying on the evolution of 3D printing. So everybody continually telling me to get a 3D printer so I can just, make 40 beholders, just paint them and put them on the shelf. If I had a monster that I wanted to create, of my own accord, I wouldn't have a miniature for it. I'm not going to sit down here and whittle one or sit down with polymer clay because I cannot use polymer clay. I have a 3D printer. I can custom make an entire set. If my players, one of them has a large day coming up, like their birthday, or, something celebratory, like they're graduating, things like that, and you want to make a custom adventure based around them, you can do that now. You can build out a full-fledged set, everything just for them. And I don't want people to, I guess, skip that. I don't want them to be like, oh, well, we'll just do this module and then this one and then this one. And, oh, well, we can add this in now that they've printed it. You don't need to wait for someone to print it. You don't need to wait for somebody else to make it. If you have a microgram of an idea in your little brain case, sit down, think about it, do some sketches, a little bit of writing, build it out more and more and more until it is a viable resource that you would have for your players. Sometimes they will just drop a one-liner that is supposed to be a joke, and then I've seen the gears working. Years ago when we were playing, you get a group of Marines together. Obviously, there's going to be many stupid things said and done. It's just a guarantee of the of the situation. I'm not telling any of those stories on YouTube. I don't need my channel to get banned. But you'll have somebody say, again, a one-liner that's supposed to be there for comic relief, and then you just look at your DM and you just see the gears turning between the eyes. It's just like, oh, okay, this is what we're gonna like. And the next session they come and they just lay down just this either massive evolution or decimation, whichever they had in their mind, for their players to enjoy. But that's what I feel like gaming should be. And I know that gaming is different for everyone. What gaming should be is different for everyone. And whatever you need in order to get happiness, enjoyment, fulfillment out of this, that's what you should do. I only wanted to pose the question to those of you that have been playing or are getting into playing that might be enjoying these little videos of painted pieces of plastic on my channel of what you think the future of this industry is looking like. I think there is an immense amount of potential and hope for where we're going. Um, I feel it's more popular than I remember it being. I mean, I was in high school 12 years ago and I remember it not being popular. I can't imagine what it was, in its early years of second, third, and 3.5, how unpopular or questionable or what have you it may be. Um, so I think we're only moving forward. But I also wonder, again, just I hope we don't leave the personality behind in lieu of all of the mass production that is happening. I hope it doesn't lose its little bit of charm. That the players themselves can provide the game, or the dungeon master or game master themselves can provide the game, versus just what is spoon-fed to you from the industry. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'd love to have a discussion about this. I think it's really interesting. Hopefully you also enjoyed the little painting that's going on in the background. I think he turned out pretty good. We're going to get some basing put on him too, just a little bit of terrain effects. And like I said, these players have been through a lot, so they needed to look a little bit more grungy than their past vibrant selves. So as always, like if you enjoyed the video, please comment. I'm really interested to see what you guys think about this, and subscribe if you want to come back for more. Take care.